So hello and welcome to another edition of Shattered Lives, the Irish Daily Star and Irish Mirror's crime podcast. And Happy New Year. It's been some time since we've been on with you. Hopefully there's still people interested in listening to us, but we have been hardened by all of the messages that we've gotten on social media over the last 2 months or so, people asking us what happened to the pod. So we've come back. We decided to give it another go. So thanks for bearing with us. So I'll introduce, as always, Michael O'Toole, our crime and defence editor. How are you doing, Mick?
Paul, how are you?
I'm all right. Feeling a little more refreshed now that we've got back to it after the Christmas period.
It was a long break, but I think it was a deserved one. When you look back on the year we had, I'm not the world's smallest violin, but we do this on top of our normal job. And when you think about it, it was a hell of a year. We had the the Aisling Murphy trial. We were doing that every day. And the Jerry Monk trial, the Jerry the Monk Hutch trial. And they were two really, really high profile and very stressful and very hard trials. And you wouldn't expect a trial like that every 4 or 5 years, and to have two in the 1 year, I think really was exceptional. So they were very hard.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary year. I mean, it's only when I kind of sat back from it all at the end of the Christmas break and realized the amount of stories that we've gone through, even just outside of those two massive trials. It was a momentous year, and even the month of December was an unusually busy year. It was a year without gangland murders right up until the end of the year. I think we nearly jinxed ourselves by saying there wouldn't be, or there haven't been any gangland incidents, and then we had perhaps the most eventful gangland incident in the last 2 years, really, or more so, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But I don't think we really saw gangland crime on the radar, really, in the last 18 months anyway.
No, I think we'll talk about this later, but I do a homicide review every year. The reason we call it homicides, some people take exception to this. The reason we call it homicides is because some are murder and some are manslaughter. So homicide is the catch-all for everything. And there were, to give you an example, on the whole island, so all 32 counties, there were 10 gun crimes. Now, most of them, gun murders, most of them are gangland. In 2022, and up until, last year, up until December, there had been one gun killing. But by the end of the year, there were another 3. So in December, really, the last month or two, there were 3 gun killings, including Jay Hennessy Sr. Although he died in the new year, his murder is officially classified in Garda statistics as a 2023 murder because the attack happened on the 24th of December. So he is part of the statistics, sad statistics for 2023. He won't be in the 2024 figure. So yeah, I mean, look, it was an exceptional year for a lack of gangland crime, and then it just exploded towards the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, we took a bit of a break with this pod because we were exhausted. The year hasn't let up. But we've come back because we think that there's plenty still to discuss, and it's going to be an interesting year. Maybe we'll talk about that towards the end of the pod, where what we think are going to be, not that we are Mystic Meg, but we can somewhat predict maybe some of the big events, such as maybe the arrest and prosecution of the Kinahans. But I want to just on that subject speak about Liam Byrne, because that's something I've been covering today. Now, we were expecting a bit more of a development today. Unfortunately, the case didn't progress to quite the level we thought it would, but it's still worth discussing. Because Liam Byrne is never out of the news, but he made quite the splash there just before Christmas. So about mid-December, he was extradited back to Great Britain by the National Crime Agency. As people might recall, this has been going on for a couple of months. Liam Byrne was being investigated by the NCA, and he was arrested in Spain when he travelled from Dubai to meet family there. And he was actually arrested while having dinner in a restaurant, or maybe it was lunch, with the family. And then there was a very long extradition process, and just before Christmas there, he was extradited back to Great Britain, and we learned that he was charged with 13 different offences, So this is a bit of a complicated case, and we have to be somewhat careful. Although we are outside the jurisdiction, I'm not going to get into the complete speculation and the nitty gritty, but we can talk about the facts of it. But basically, Liam Byrne today was his first appearance for what was supposed to be an arraignment. So that means to plead guilty or not guilty in this case. And he's facing, as I said, 13 charges: possession of firearms, ammunition, and perverting the course of justice. And even that charge alone, perverting the course of justice, very serious in the UK, carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. So if he's convicted of these offences, it's safe to say he's going to face a very lengthy sentence indeed.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I remember I was doing the stories at the time of his arrest in Spain, and I was doing research. And the firearms offence, I had to look up the British statute, and if memory serves me right, the firearms offence, I think it was a maximum of 10 years.
Yes.
So you broke the story that he was facing life because of this other charge, which was perverting the course of justice, which is a very, very serious charge in its own right. One thing that I found interesting was, well, I'd like your views on this, Paul. The NCA, the National Crime Agency, released a video, photographs, and then a video of him landing. Was it Manchester, or was it London Heathrow Airport, or one of the London airports? I think he was brought in. Was it?
Yes, and he was brought into Westminster Magistrates Court there in London. Yeah.
So we have the same common law system as Britain, and it always amazes me how open the English police forces can be. They'll release mugshots, that sort of thing, and they weren't shy in putting photographs and videos up of Mr. Byrne. He hasn't been convicted of any sense, but there was really no mess in there. I was quite shocked by that.
Yeah, and it was also fantastic to see because I don't mean to slate on Garda Síochána here. We just have a different system here where we're not privy to being given that level of access, photographs of somebody being arrested and hauled before the court, and everybody gets to see it, the whole process. But it's great to see that, really. We need to see more of that. Because that is the process. I mean, he's been extradited against his will because he did protest it, and he's been brought back here on very serious charges. And the NCA do allege that Liam Byrne is a member of the Kinahan cartel, senior member of the Kinahan cartel. Of course, we're very familiar with him, over the years. And I don't propose to go into the whole history, but people will remember, obviously, his brother was killed as part of the Kinahan Hutch feud, David Byrne, in the Regency Hotel. His houses were seized, property assets by the Criminal Assets Bureau. His life here in Ireland is effectively over. Then he went to the UK, and now he's being pursued by the UK authorities and facing a very serious jail sentence if he's convicted. I just want to briefly talk about the court appearance today. There's not a whole lot in it, but it was interesting to see him again. This is the first time we've seen him since that arrest, and we've learned that he was in Belmarsh Prison. He's been in Belmarsh Prison. That's where he spent the Christmas period. It's a very high security, maximum security prison there in the heart of London, and it's the exact same prison that Bomber Kavanagh is also housed in.
And also, for those of us of a certain generation, when John Gilligan was arrested as part of the investigation into the June 1996 murder of crime reporter Veronica Guerin, he was held in Belmarsh. So I think it's the maximum security prison.
Yes, it is a Category A prisoners. I think it was called, I'm going to get this wrong, but it has been dubbed Britain's Guantanamo Bay. Even it had some of the more serious, well-known prisoners in it over the years. So you've got Bomber Kavanagh now rubbing shoulders with his brother-in-law, Liam Byrne, and they're both housed there while they're on trial. This is all part of this one alleged conspiracy. And the allegation would have been, and we wrote about this in the Star at the time, was that Bomber Kavanagh, the allegation is, and I mean he's convicted, he would have been a central figure in the Kinahan cartel operation in Europe, in the whole of Europe, Britain and Ireland and Europe. And the allegation would be that once Bomber was convicted and charged and pleaded guilty and got 21 years last year, that Liam Byrne would have taken over as running the Kinahan cartel in Europe. So he is a very significant target, and that's why the National Crime Agency were involved. And I think that's why, they did jump out at me about the press release, and they said he was part of the Kinahan cartel. So, as I said, they weren't messing about, and he was a serious target. Yeah, absolutely. And this alleged offence is very complicated, but in a nutshell, it's bizarre to even describe it, but it just to explain to people that Liam Byrne is on trial along with Thomas Kavanagh. his brother-in-law, Jack Kavanagh, who is still to be extradited from Spain. That's Bomber's young son, and an individual named Sean Kent. And the NCA basically alleges that they conspired to pervert the course of justice. I'm now quoting the NCA, so I don't get in trouble, by planning to reveal the location of weapons in an attempt to get Thomas Kavanagh a reduced sentence. So, as people may recall, Thomas Kavanagh, Bomber Kavanagh, he is in prison now for serving a 21-year sentence. And that's on a guilty plea, by the way, a 21-year sentence for conspiring to bring in €36 million worth of cocaine into the UK. Very serious charge. But in the course of this, the allegation is that a bunch of weapons, firearms, and he was doing that to get himself a reduced sentence. Of course, the NCA went to the location, I believe in Newry, and discovered those 11 firearms. That's handguns, machine guns, machine pistols, all fully loaded, ready to go. And they got them, and they then charged Thomas Kavanagh in relation to that seizure. And there was also the infamous EncroChat hack. And through that, they have encrypted conversations that they say involve Liam Byrne and Jack Kavanagh and this Sean Kent individual, all conspiring to possess these weapons in a bid to get Thomas Kavanagh a reduced sentence. So it's a bizarre alleged conspiracy trying to get Bomber Kavanagh a reduced prison sentence. It didn't work in that case, and now they're all facing possible prison time if found guilty.
And just very briefly, EncroChat is an underground communication system, or was an underground communication system, supposedly extremely secure, used by major criminals and gangsters all over Europe, but it was cracked. And I think wasn't it Interpol cracked it and sent out all the messages relevant to each country. So the British have run an operation, the NCA have run an operation called Operation Venetic, when they use the messages as evidence in court cases, and it's been very successful. They've seized millions of euro worth of drugs and cash itself, and also quite a lot of weapons. We've spoken about this before. My contention is that the Gardaí have the messages, but they're using them as intelligence rather than evidence, probably because of the different legal system where things are much more open to legal challenge in Ireland. That's my view. Others may differ that the guards aren't using it, but I think it's clear as day that the guards are using it before as intelligence. But anyway, that's EncroChat. So it has been very, very successful for law enforcement all over the world, really, because it's been used in Australia and America, everything as well, this EncroChat. So it was a significant blow to major organised crime gangs.
Massively, and we've yet to see the details of, the evidence that the NCA have in relation to the encrypted conversations. That will happen when this matter goes to trial. Bomber Kavanagh and Liam Byrne have yet to plead in this, so we don't know whether this even will go to trial, whether there's a guilty plea or not. It was supposed to happen today. We heard that Thomas Kavanagh was ready to plea, as was Liam Byrne. But a bit of a technical snag. There is a separate case that's going on in the Manchester area in relation to Sean Kent. And the court today basically heard that they wanted to loop this case in with the overall case. So everything has been delayed. It's been put back to March. So neither of the two men were arraigned today. They've been remanded back into custody. So we won't know until at least the 1st of March what way Bomber Kavanagh and Liam Byrne are swinging in terms of guilty or not guilty, and whether we're going to have a lengthy and very interesting trial later this year.
You were watching it remotely today, Paul. Could you see Mr. Byrne or Mr. Kavanagh? Were they visible, or was it? Yeah,
you could see them both sitting in separate rooms, obviously, but both in Belmarsh Prison. Bomber Kavanagh was sitting. He almost looked like he was waiting for a bus because he was sitting on a row of seats. But anyway, it's just an interesting setup. But he was wearing a Nike tracksuit, and it looks the same as everyone may remember him from the mugshots. And then Liam Byrne wearing a black t-shirt, sitting with his arms folded in front of a desk. Seemed to have a watch on him as well. So yeah, just they didn't say anything or react really in any way. You won't, the public, see those images of them in prison. It's an offence for anybody to take a photograph of it, but just to give you an idea of the setup, they were appearing via video link. If this does go to trial, it might be a different story. Then they might have to come into the courtroom. But I think the UK system, they seem to, since COVID, be dealing with a lot of these court cases remotely. I mean, much the barristers were even appearing remotely, so it doesn't appear to have really been anyone other than the judge and a handful of people in the courtroom today.
Yeah, because I remember I was at Bomber Kavanagh's remotely. I was at Bomber Kavanagh's appearances. I think you did as well, because it was quite a long-running saga. But in that case, there were several, I think, barristers and various people in the courtroom, but we could watch it remotely, and a lot of people were watching it. But so in this case, it was just the judge, really.
Yes, more or less. That's all you could see on the camera. So yeah, look, we have to park that until we see what happens. But it's a fascinating case, and one that, you know, if the allegations are true, it seems a bizarre conspiracy that completely has fallen flat, and they've got egg on their faces if it's true, because this was all an attempt to get someone a reduced sentence, and now they're all looking at possible prison time and enhanced prison time in Bomber Kavanagh's case. He was actually, that's something I forgot to mention, in his last court appearance, he was going to challenge the allegations against him and try to have the case thrown out. But we heard today that that's not the case anymore. He's no longer fighting to have the case thrown out. But we still don't know whether he's pleading guilty or not guilty. But that effort as such to have the case dismissed against him has ceased for whatever reason, whatever's going on, whatever we're not privy to behind the scenes. So shall we move on? Because we've got lots to discuss. You want to talk homicide, because we brought that up at the start, but you collated all of the various homicides throughout the year, and it's a shocking number by comparison to the previous year.
Yeah, so I do this every year. There's myself and Conor Feehan in the Irish Independent. We collate the murders and homicides and manslaughter cases. Prince, just as an act of journalism, Gardaí usually release figures themselves, but just even for journalists ourselves, it's a good practice to do this. So we've been doing it for a couple of years, and I slightly differ. Conor sticks to the Republic. I do the whole island, so because Reach has newspapers and that north and south, and I'd have a 32 county view. So last year there were 66 homicides, north and south. This year there were 41. Now, as I was saying, J. Hennessy Senior was shot on the 24th of December, but he died. It was last week that he lost his fight. It was last week. So normally you would think that he would be regarded as the first victim of the year, but he was actually the last. Well, there was a fella in Tipperary, but so he was one of the last homicides officially of 2024. But what's really interesting is in 2022 there were 10 gun homicides. This year there were 4. Now 3 of them were in the Republic. 1 was in the North, and I think that's a really remarkable case. I can remember looking back, in fact, I have it on my computer, some years there were up to maybe more than 30 gun killings in a year, and now we're down to 4, and we were very close really to having maybe 1 gun killing and none in the Republic, but just things went a bit crazy towards the end of the year. So I wonder why that is. I wonder why there has been such a it's welcome, but I wonder why there has been such a reduction in gun crime.
Well, you would hope that the Gardaí are on top of it. Maybe that's what it is. And we probably would have said up until December that the gangland scene seemed to be quite quiet. There didn't seem to be any obvious tensions other than the odd. There were incidents in Tala and rumours of a feud there. I mean, even Corduff, the feud which we'll talk about now in a minute, had calmed down. We weren't really seeing any major violence in that in the past 2 years, so it wasn't on the radar. I don't know what's changed, but it's fascinating to see the reduction in gun crime. I
definitely think that the guards have been more successful, and one of the things we know is there's more than 70 members of the Kinnan cartel or people associated with the Kinnan cartel who are basically locked up in prison, mostly in Ireland, 1 in Spain, a couple in Spain and a couple in Britain. But there are an awful lot of gunmen who are part of that gang who are locked in prison, but there are also others who have had to flee Ireland because the guards are on their case. And I mean, you and I can think of a couple of them who are hiding out in Spain and that. So don't think there's any doubt that the Garda reaction to the Kinnan cartel's murderous attacks on anyone they wanted, who they thought in any way were associated with the Hutch family or extended family, really 2016, 2017 was really, really bad. But I think Garda got a handle on it, and they have been very, very successful. And that's shown, I would contend, by the decrease in gun killings, because basically a lot of the hitmen are either in jail or out of the country.
Well, is that a good segue to talk about Corduff? Because, you know, I think you're correct in what you're saying in your assessment. Obviously, it's backed up in the facts, but unfortunately, as you know, and I know about gangland, it only takes one incident to trigger an absolute explosion of violence. I mean, the Regency Hotel, okay, look, the feud had started before that, but the Regency Hotel incident just sparked a wave of murders in the country, and the reaction then to it had Gardaí on the back foot. They had to catch up to it. Now, we're in a very different situation since 2016. Certainly, there's far more of an armed presence, you know, and a readiness for that kind of violence. And I think the Gardaí are to be commended, even in the last week and a half alone, that in spite of there being serious potential for violence, we've not actually seen, touch wood, as of recording this podcast, any major retaliations since the death of Jason Hennessy last week.
But I do think there is significant likelihood of a revenge attack. There are associates of Mr. Hennessy who are baying for blood. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And some of them would be, I think it's fair to say, they'd be very volatile, very unpredictable, very angry people, and they're taking the murder of Mr. Hennessy, extremely personally. So I think the guards, the armed support unit, probably the emergency response unit, and the local detective units and various other units are all out 24 hours a day. I think they're trying to keep a lid on this. So there is scope and potential for serious violence as a result of this murder.
Yeah, and the individuals you're speaking about, I mean, they are unpredictable and have no boundaries. And I suppose the fear that we understand amongst An Garda Síochána, while they're doing the best that they can, is that these individuals could strike at any time, including during or after a funeral, for example. And obviously the funeral of Tristan Sherry hasn't happened yet. Understand that the body is to be released to the family relatively shortly. Obviously, he died on Christmas Eve, so it's a considerable amount of time between his alleged murder and now. But I understand there was a post-mortem, and then I think an independent post-mortem as well. So that's causing the delay. But there are serious concerns about the individuals you've mentioned and their capacity for violence, even during the funeral. And so I think there'll be a massive security operation around that. But we understand that Jason Hennessy Sr.'s funeral is actually happening first. I'm told the preparations were being made for midweek. Obviously, he's from the Corduff area, and there's going to be an equally massive security operation around that. I think the main concern really, and again, who knows, because people have associates, and I'm sure that they're looking at both sides here, but when it comes to associates of Mr. Hennessy, I think there is a serious concern about those individuals, as you said, and the fact that they may be looking for revenge. Just on that particular murder, should we speak about it? Just because... Yes,
nobody is charged with the murder of Mr. Hennessy.
Yeah. Yes, with Tristan Sherry, there are individuals charged. So we do have to be cautious in terms of what we say. But in relation to Mr. Hennessy, look, the expectation was that initially, I believe that he may survive, and he was shot in the neck, which is obviously a serious injury. And unfortunately, his condition deteriorated over a period of 11 days, and he was transferred then into ICU and died. And even though he died 11 days later, his death is being treated as a murder. And the gunman, the gunman that is at large, the individual who fled Brown's Steakhouse, is still being sought after, and we believe that the guards want to arrest and charge him with murder.
Yes, so we have to, obviously Tristan Sherry was the shooter who was he's dead, and people are before the courts in relation to Tristan Sherry, but there was someone else there, and we know that that man went into the steakhouse with Tristan Sherry, and he was armed with a pistol in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
I think he basically panicked when they couldn't find their targets straight away, and he fled. And then what happened to Mr. Sherry happened. But the guards are still mounting an investigation into that, and they are looking for that second gunman. So if they find him and they charge him, it will be with murder because it's common design or common cause or joint enterprise. So it can't just, there were two people involved in it, Tristan Sherry and this other person. So that man is being hunted by Gardaí.
There are obviously serious concerns for that person's safety. The associates of Mr. Hennessy are considered dangerous and volatile, and it is believed that they may target this individual if they get to him first. So look, the next couple of days will be crucial for Gardaí. They have to mount a massive security operation. There are extra patrols out on the streets around Finglas and Blanchardstown, Corduff. It's a hotbed of activity at the moment, and they are watching all of these individuals. They know where they are. Having said that, they can't watch them 24/7. So are we in Kinahan Hutch territory? I don't know. I think media sometimes we can build these things up, but we're hearing it legitimately from sources that there is a real fear among Garda Síochána that this could blow up into a maybe not a feud, but certainly there could be an escalation in violence, particularly from one side, certainly. And so look, there's real concerns.
I know that criminal known as Mr. Flashy, people are sort of linking this to him. I don't get that sense from my sources. I don't think there's any belief that he was part of this.
Well, again, he just gets looped into it, doesn't he? But look, Tristan Sherry, we've heard, was an associate at one point of the person we like to call Mr. Flashy. It would be so much easier just to use his name, but there are reasons why we can't name him. And by the way, I could go on another rant about this, because you could probably go and look on social media and find names of people very easily. We have to hold ourselves to a certain standard. But anyway, that's another rant. But yes, Mr. Flashy, he had an association with him. I don't think that there is any current issue with Mr. Flashy and the associates of Mr. Hennessy. That's a feud, really, or a dispute that's going back a couple of years. But this dispute with Tristan Sherry was much more personal, wasn't it? I mean, we've learned that from our sources, that this was a much more personal dispute between Tristan Sherry himself and associates of Jason Hennessy.
Yeah, no, obviously he had help because there was another person with him.
Yeah.
But, I think we'd be of the belief that it was orchestrated by Sherry, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. But then does this begin and end with him? I mean, obviously he has been killed. There's another person, as I said, at large. There's concerns for that person's safety. But was the dispute as such just with Tristan Sherry?
I think that's the focus of it, and we don't know. I mean, because it's all hidden. But somebody made a point to me. I think it's fair to say this is the most brazen gun attack since the Regency. Because when you consider about it, there were families and there were people there enjoying a pre-Christmas dinner, and two fellas walk in, one with a machine pistol, one with a pistol. The place was packed. It was brazen, and it was so. There have obviously been lots of killings and gun killings since then, but it was definitely brazen by the way it was carried out.
Yeah, and again, we've got to be careful because there's people before the courts who'd like to talk about it in more detail. I would say people can be armchair detectives and try to say in general that they have an understanding of the situation and that, they speak about self-defense, shall we say, and that, look, this is a matter that's before the courts, so leave it to the courts. Yes. But just in speaking about in general about the crime, I mean, Christmas Eve, getting text messages coming in on the phone being told that there has been a shooting in a restaurant or whatever. I mean, it was just, I remember, I don't know what your reaction was, but I was working Christmas Day, so I went, oh, here we go.
Because we thought we had, you had a story, because we always try and have a story for Christmas Day, because our story comes out on Stephen's Day. So you want to have something up, but I think it was, once that happened and it was laid on, it was 20 to 9 or something, wasn't it? When we first heard about it. Mm-hmm. So that was hectic. So we definitely didn't see that coming.
No, I wish I could say I was shocked by it, though. Unfortunately, the level of violence, it just the past couple of years has been insane. Still, to do it in broad, like in front of people like that, in a busy restaurant, obviously it is shocking. But at this stage, I would really put nothing past these people. They just live in another world.
Yeah, and they don't really care about who gets in their way. Sherry could have killed anybody in that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I think brazen is the very, and I think it is the most maybe cataclysmic attack since the Regency in that regard. You know what I mean? And the number of people who were caught up in it and the number of victims that there could have been in this. So it was very, very grim. Right. Shall we talk about the unmentionable, the Kinnan cartel?
Yeah, well, I mean, where do you see it going next? I mean, we know that there's a file with the DPP, but a decision surely is around the corner.
Yes, and when you think about it, it was 2021, wasn't it, that they announced the sanctions against the cartel, or was it 2022? It's all a blur for me.
2020.
Here's a test for you, Healy.
2022. Yeah.
Was it?
April,
okay, right.
2022.
Our listeners will be correcting this. It's a blur. It's just in the past for me. But it's gone on a long time. So you would think that 2024 would have to be the year that there's progress on getting, particularly, we all know Daniel's the top target. We know that there's a file with the DPP in relation to him for various issues that carry life. So, conspiracy, murder, and murder. So I think this is the year that people would expect something to happen in relation to him. Now, I think there has been progress in relation to getting the possibility of an extradition agreement on one-on-one basis with Dubai, where he is still believed to be. So I think there's feverish activity under the surface trying to get a deal, but that doesn't mean that he can't just skedaddle. The rest of them can get out and go to Russia or wherever they want to go. But I think there are serious efforts to get him back to Ireland, and then the fun will begin. So the file is with the DPP. It's a very, very big file, I'm told. Huge, big file. They have to consider it all. So I would say 2024, sometime in 2024, you and I are going to get a call one day to say it's happened.
Well, what a day that would be, and it'll be an extraordinary trial to cover if they are ultimately extradited here. Obviously, Helen McEntee has made an attempt now to broker a treaty of sorts with the United Arab Emirates. My only hope is that there's something going on here that we really just don't know about. We certainly have gotten the impression from sources over the past couple of months that Daniel Kinahan hasn't left Dubai for whatever reason. He feels comfortable there, or he's unable to leave, or whatever it is, but he has not left the vicinity of the UAE. I mean, I know there's been speculation about him going to Russia or Qatar or wherever, but there doesn't seem to be any indication of that. And, if you're going to go to these places, why not have gone already? So for whatever reason, he's still there. He feels comfortable. And we'll see what happens. But the government are quite open. The Gardaí are quite open about the fact that they're going for them. And they're doing it quite publicly. So, as I said, I hope there's a degree of confidence there behind the scenes that they know something we don't know. And that's why they're being so brazen and so public about it.
I can guarantee you they know plenty of things that you and I will never know. Yeah. If we get to hear 10%, we're lucky. But just one very quick point. We talked about Liam Byrne being extradited and the due process, although Britain has left the European Union, but there are still extradition treaties and, that sort of stuff. There's nothing in Dubai, and the Dubai authorities can just rock up to him 10:30 on a Monday night and say, all right, Michacho, you're on the plane. And that's it. So, we won't have any chance really to fight it. It'll just be, you're gone, like Raffaele Imperiale. Yeah, who would have been very close to Daniel Kinahan. He was extradited from Dubai to Italy, and he's now what they call a pentito. So he's singing like a canary really over there. But that was it, you were gone. And the same would happen here. It'll just be, 1 minute you're here, the next you're gone. So it won't be a long drawn out process once it starts.
Well, let's see. It's going to be a very interesting year. I certainly couldn't have predicted last year. Couldn't have predicted Jerry Hutch walking out of the Special Criminal Court free man. So who knows? Since
our last show, you got an award for your fantastic journalism last year. You won Crime Journalist of the Year. I'm very disappointed. You haven't made enough of it. We did talk about this privately. I told you that you have to make more. You've been very, very modest, and that's been very disappointing, Healy. But anyway, congratulations, and it was a well-deserved award.
Well, Thank you. What do you suggest that I go out and gloat about it a bit more? And
Yeah, because I mean, I've spoken about this. I didn't want, obviously I may have won it a couple of times, but I was very sheepish and thing, and it's a big thing to get. So, accept it and wallow in it or whatever.
I know it meant a lot. So it's nice to get that pat in the back from the industry and to, it was a nice acknowledgement, of what was actually probably the most difficult year for him. So no, it was nice, but I'm not trying to be Mr. Humble about it. I graciously accepted it, and thank you very much. And next year is another year. This year,
it's like one of my old bosses, Jerk Holler, and it is nice doing it. But he would say whenever I would get a story, and when you get a good scoop, you sit down, and you go, right, I can relax today, right, or you can relax. It depends how big it is. If it's a really massive one, like you're a Hutch one, you think you can sort of relax for a week. Colin had this great thing. He'd go, eating bread is soon forgotten. And that's it,
It's tomorrow's shit paper, yeah.
You and I have got a couple of good stories that'll be in the Star and the Mirror on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some very good stories. But it'll be, the editors, the news editors will go, very good, what do you got for tomorrow? And that's it. That's just the way we go on. So it keeps us grounded, doesn't it?
Yeah. On that note, I actually do have to file a story now. So
do I.
Listen, thank you to our listeners for continuing to listen to us. If you're still out there, thanks for all your kind messages. We'll do our best to be as regular as we can be with these podcasts. Please bear with us. Andre is on board with us now, producing the podcast. So thank you to Andre. And we'll be in touch with you sometime, maybe later in the week or next week. Thank you.
And thanks very much. And also, just to repeat, if there's anything you think you'd like us to cover, give us a wee shout on we always take our DMs, so there's no problem.